as Lenore asked, I actually have voice today. Woo! I'll tell you right now, that was a little frustrating Wednesday night. Actually, starting a new series tonight. It's called Why in the World. And tonight we're going to look at why Christ came. That's the whole point in this whole series. Yes, Wednesday was awful, and we're going to repeat it this coming year that I'll just redo the service. Since nobody did it anyway. This coming day we will just repeat the message. So everybody's already got note cards, so I don't have to go. No. But yes, Wednesday was very bad, and things went very bad. We couldn't get voice to work. And as I understand it, several of the viewers had updates last week, and that may be the problem with the voice. They're having some kind of issue with Linden. One of the things they made, they changed. So I was just blessed tonight. Did you notice that Christians, we say a lot of really crazy things? I mean, we come up with some stuff that people just look at, and if you weren't a believer, they make absolutely no sense. One of the things that I think the world looks at us and says, okay, you can't possibly believe is that God sent his son who became one of us. Which is kind of strange. It's really kind of a strange thought. You know, if you grew up in the United States, if you grew up in the church, you hear it all the time. But when you stop and think about it, really, it's kind of like, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm not sure I can go with you on that. God became one of us. The person who explained this best was the Apostle John. It was Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And John was an eyewitness. In Christianity, you're kind of skeptical, which of course you would be. Pretty crazy things. One of the reasons is because eyewitnesses are the ones that told the story, and John was one of those eyewitnesses. He followed Jesus through his ministry. I mean, think about that. If you it doesn't make any sense that if there is a God, why would he come to earth and become one? And he followed Jesus throughout his ministry, and we believe Jesus was the Son of God, and then he saw Jesus crucified, and he went, oh, no, not the Son of God can't be crucified. And he peered into an empty tomb, he was back. And he told about it, and Emperor Domitian of it, because everywhere John went, people began, and he decided maybe I should just put John to death, but every time they killed a Christian, 10 more would spring. And so he took John, Apostle John, and put him on an island called Patmos to live out his life in isolation. We could be looking... Ooh, sorry. Where did that come from? We're going to be looking at the book of John. And so, here he is on Patmos, and he had a long time to think about what he believed. And banishment kept him from becoming a Christian martyr. But John said in John 1 and 1:14, and the Word became flesh and dwelt or pitched his tent among us. And we saw his glory as the only begotten Son of the Father, full of grace and truth. This is literally, who's that? Matthew was there, and James was there, and John. And a couple other Jameses and Johns, and they were all there, and they all glory as the only begotten Son of the Father, full of grace and truth. John's reflecting, he's writing it down, he's realizing I'm an old man, and Jesus hasn't returned yet. And we're not talking, more than 30 years since the death and resurrection. And a lot of the other disciples are already gone at this point. They've already been arrested and executed for faith. And it's the best way I can describe my summary of spending about 3 years with this man. Jesus showed up in a body and he dwelled among us. What if that's true? What if it really happened? What if John's right, or Peter's right, and James and brother right? So we got to answer this question. Assuming that happened, why did it happen? Why in the world would God become one of us? Live as one of us, among us. Why would he do that? And now, this is very important. Nobody was expecting this. The Jewish people were expecting Messiah, but nobody expected the Messiah to live among men. Nobody was looking for that. They thought he would be a descendant of David who would be a military ruler, overthrow the Romans, and restore it to its military strength. In fact, all of the ancient religions, nobody expected God to come down. Every time he was trying to move up, Pharaoh decided he was a god. So all through the pharaohs were God moving on up. Roman emperors, they all wanted to become deified. You find Julius Caesar, after he died, the Senate decided we're going to deify him. They elected him to be God. Nero wanted to be God, and all the emperors wanted to be deified. Deified so-and-so. Kind of moving on up. Everybody wanted to become a god. Expected God to come in our direction. Nobody, and they really didn't expect him to show up as a baby. I mean, how fragile, how vulnerable, how tiny. That's just not. If you're going to make the story about God coming up to live among men, it's a and there's an earthquake or something, and somebody stops, and they're God to live among men. I mean, isn't that how we would write it if we were writing it to our own imagination? You know, I was sitting one day, and this man appeared, and he had flowing robes and burning eyes, and he was just so big and so important, and I realized in a moment that it was God. See, the thing of Jesus is that nobody would have made that up. Nobody. This isn't how you would have written the story, because that just isn't how God would to live among men. But the men who were there, who experienced the story, said, yeah, that's how it happened. He shows up as a baby, born into the home of a carpenter, and he becomes a carpenter. So I mean, that's what basically, you know, he spends 3 years working as a rabbi, and allowed himself to die in the most degrading way possible, and he came to us. And he steps in the scene of history, and we watched him, and we listened, and then when it was over, we come to the conclusion, God came to dwell. What if that's true? So that's what we're going to do for the next few weeks. We're going to question why. Why did he come? There's kind of the Sunday school answer. We're going to get to that because that's important. But there's some other reasons that Jesus came other than to simply die and pay for our sins. Yes, it's important he did that. I'm glad he did that. Hope and glory. But why did he bother to come at all? And so we're going to discover these together, but because you're a very sophisticated audience, and if you're watching online, a very